This is Dr. Chandra Smallwood. Thank you for watching the Fear Fighter podcast. Today I want to talk about anxiety and dating a newly released citizen, as in someone who was incarcerated for many years. That has been my life lately, and it has been really, really interesting. I'm going to give my perspective, try to be as unbiased as I can. This is just for anyone, who may be in the same situation, because this is the first time for me and I didn't really know what to expect. So I'm just going to talk about my experience and tell me what you think. So I met this person last year about the same time as now, and we kind of showed interest in each other but didn't really pursue anything. A few months later, we ended up getting in contact, going on a hike, going to dinner, hanging out. We ended up having COVID together, quarantining together, and getting pregnant together. So it has been quite the road with this situation. So I just want to talk about some of the things that I've noticed or that I've gone through or that has been hard and easy for me. First, I think he's a pretty nice guy, gentle person, which was a surprise for me. I was like, he was incarcerated for 16 years, from the time he was 16 to the time he was 32. He's only 34 now, so he's only been out for a little while. But I felt very surprised at the gentleness of him. And I was pleasantly surprised by that, and I was like, oh, that's nice, And still to this day, he's still a very sweet person. But of course, we've had our ups and downs. So first, I want to say, if you're dating someone who was incarcerated for a long time, then you realize that they haven't been in society, right? I mean, that's a big difference. Being confined somewhere, you have no privacy, you really don't have your own anything for the most part, except, I guess, your body and your mind. And some people probably don't have that. But you realize that they must come into the world, and the world is full of all sorts of crazy obstacles. I mean, different obstacles, because obviously there's obstacles in prison as well, but a lot of obstacles, a lot of distractions. One thing that was hard, it was hard to relate to the things that he knew compared to me living in this world my whole life, and that big difference. One of the things that he talked about a lot and described a lot was prison, the things that happened in prison, food. We'd watch documentaries sometimes, and this was just a big part of the stuff that he talked about. Most of his friends were incarcerated. That was just his life. And even though, that is what it is, it's not easy to relate to, right? As someone who knows nothing about, that world whatsoever. So I felt like it was interesting because it was like stuff I didn't know, but I also wondered why you would want to think back to something so tragic and talk about it often. But I guess if that's what you know, that's what you know. If something's good or bad for someone, they tend to talk about it, right? Like, I guess, if someone was in a bad situation, an abusive situation for years and years, if that's what they know, that's kind of, where their comfort zone is. So that was a lot for me. I had to think about it, like, why is he telling me about all this prison stuff? We're out in the real world. But hey, I mean, that makes sense. I can only talk about what I know too, right? Another was conflict. We had a good amount of conflict through the relationship. Mostly it was hard to see eye to eye on different things. As someone who's older, I'm 41, I'm was single for a while. I wanted to date, find someone. I want to get married. I want to spend my life with a man. So coming into this situation in that way made me very, what do I want to say, like determined, intentional. I had expectations, all sorts of different things. But it's like, you know, this person hasn't been in society for so long. And then when he was in society before, he was just a child. I mean, 16 is nothing. Like, we're still running around, can barely drive at 16. So we would talk about things, but things would kind of just go on forever at times. Like, I felt like, whereas another man may let things go, he would want to debate it, keep going and debate and debate and debate. But then that was really hard because sometimes it was kind of like, wait, you know, why do you care so much? Or I feel like you just don't want me to be right or have the last say or something like that. Like, we've had debates about men telling women to smile. You know, women don't really like that. We don't want to be told what to do with our mouth or any part of our body for the most part. And he's like, society, you know, has made you feel like that's not okay. And, you know, you're not at work. And I'm like, men always feel like they can tell women to smile. Like, we just don't really like that. That's not something that, you know, we care to hear. So things like that, we would have conversation. It was kind of like, well, I don't like it. So what are we debating it for? Like, why don't we just let it go? But it wasn't really like that, you know. And sometimes the conflict represented some of the thoughts I felt like he had about women. I feel like if you spend 16 years with men, like basically only men, I mean, I'm pretty sure women worked at the prison and came in and out, but, you know, they're not, you know, in the same living quarters as the men. So your way of looking at women may be a little skewed. You know, all you can do is talk about or hear the stories from other men or how they felt about their women. And I mean, this is prison. Like, these are people, I mean, of course, there's obviously those innocent people in prison, but there are people who are guilty, and there are people who are guilty for multiple things. And, you know, things that they have done have probably really hurt their families or caused strife or caused trauma and drama and all sorts of different feelings. So, you know, for him to me to hear about women coming from other inmates for all those years of his life, I can't say I felt like would cause the healthiest picture of being with a woman. Like, he used to always say that his friend would tell him to make sure that he had nice upholstery so he could stay in his car instead of going into a house with his woman, just in case they got into an argument or, you know, something was wrong or he wanted to just stay away from her for whatever reason. And I mean, he would say that often, like he repeated that a few times. So I felt like that was hard, you know, because for me, looking for someone I wanted to be with, and as someone in their 40s who's looking for a relationship, that made me feel very anxious because, you know, at times it's like, well, what kind of woman does he see me as? Or where do I fit into this picture of what he feels like women should be or could be or whatever else? You know, and through this conflict, I learned that from him that he really wanted to be comforted by a woman, you know, obviously, but really he wanted to be comforted by a woman 90% of the time, 95% of the time. You know, for us, you know, if you want to be comforted by us that often, then you're putting in some serious work, or you're taking care of some serious business that has to do with our life, right? Because in this day and age, women, we're doing everything, working full time. I have a house, I have a daughter, I have a dog, I have a career. Like, I have a lot of things going on. And in order for me to be that for you, you gotta, it's push and pull, it's give and take, things like that. And even though I feel like he was a giving person, I don't really know if he really made that connection. Women kind of need stability in order to provide comfort for a man. The trust has to be there. A lot has to be there for you to comfort a man all the time. My dog just kept barking. So yeah. So, I would love to comfort a man all the time. But the way these bills are, the way the time in this world is, that's a lot. It's a lot. I do my best, but it's a lot. I felt like he had a lot to do when it came to working on himself. And that was a misconception that I had, because I felt like, because at first he was sentenced to life in prison for the crime that he committed, but he ended up getting less years for multiple reasons. One of them being his motivation to get out, wanting to be out, working hard, good behavior, doing projects, helping others, just being a good citizen, a great citizen while he was in prison. And so I felt like, okay, if you're a lifer and you are out in less than 20 years, then you are a very healed human being. And even though I feel like he probably healed a lot to compared to how he was when he probably went in there, because he, went through a gang life, had an abusive childhood, things like that. To be in a relationship with someone, to think about marriage and having a child is a whole different, thought process, ball game, all that. So one day we were talking about how he was a little bit when he was younger. And it kind of gave me a perspective about the way he felt and the stuff that he probably still needed to work on, because we talked about positive reinforcement. And I think positive reinforcement is amazing. But for me, when you think about positive reinforcement, your mind first goes to children and pets, right? Because both of these categories don't really understand the hardships of life, their emotions, what to do about certain things. They can't regulate how they feel, really. They just do. They're very in the present, in the moment. So, you can't, it's hard to want to give negative reinforcement to a being that doesn't understand, because it doesn't make sense to them. They may not know while they're getting punished, but they like rewards, and that keeps them, happy and everything like that. So, for me, I'm like, okay, a grown man that wants positive reinforcement, to me, it's kind of a stretch in a way. Like, I see it happening. Like, there's lots of ways to give positive reinforcement, but in this society, when we do something wrong, we get punished. That's just what it is, right? You steal something, you get in trouble. You don't pay your credit card, you get a late fee. That's just the way it is. So he told me that when he was younger, he would do something wrong. His mom would punish him, like, in an abusive way, But he would do it again. And he realized that negative reinforcement didn't work for him. So to me, that meant that he had some unresolved things happening probably with his parents, because he was thinking way back. You know, he wanted that positive reinforcement at that time, and it wasn't given. And the negative reinforcement that he was getting was extreme. It was abusive. So even though negative reinforcement is not necessarily bad, I mean, we don't like it, but it serves a purpose, and it doesn't necessarily serve a negative purpose. I think when you're abused, you don't see it the same way. Obviously, there's no positive that's attached to abuse. It's just pure negative. So he didn't see that, he didn't see that positive aspect that comes with negative reinforcement. And I'm pretty sure in prison, it's kind of like a continuation of that. Like, it's probably all negative reinforcement, and it's probably more abusive than it necessarily has to be. And even though I feel like that's to be expected from his circumstances, it's so hard for me who, is not familiar with that, or doesn't have the same, way to think, or can't really relate. It's very hard to relate to someone that hasn't been in society for, most of their life. Basically all of their life, because when you're a teenager, it's way different than being an adult. Another thing is planning. I like to plan stuff. This is life. When you're trying to combine two worlds together, two people together, you kind of have to plan, because you both are different. You have different timelines, different expectations, so many things. So a lot of things we would do were not planned, or it would just be last minute, or I think he'd want to have surprises, make surprises, which surprises are awesome. But, when it's not enough planning, you ended up kind of not doing anything or not going anywhere. So that's kind of what happened, what's happening still. Life is not in us as a couple, or us as friends or co-parents or whatever we're gonna do. There's no plan. So for me, I crave a plan, because I've been living this life, and you have a plan in this life, right? To do, you have goals and things like that, but it's not the same, for him. He probably thinks it's the same, I don't know, but for me, I could tell that it was a big difference, Even the other day, like, he made an assumption that I thought that he was going to take me out, and that's why I did something that I did. And I was thinking to myself, I didn't think that at all. Like, my mind isn't going to just automatically go to somewhere like that, if you don't say something to me, because I expect there to be a plan. Like, when we first started dating, I had to put up boundaries, because he would show up, not really show up unannounced, but he would be like, hey, I'm on my way there. And I'd be like, whoa, whoa. I have a whole night planned. You can't just show up. Like, I have things I need to do. And that was a lot. That was a lot at the beginning. Because there was a good week where I don't think he realized that he was overstepping, and I really had to put boundaries up quick. And that was I think that was kind of trifling for both of us, actually, because I did not expect that at all. And he had a relationship not too long before me, so maybe that is how they were. I'm not sure. But for me, at this, good old age in your 40s, now we didn't really like that. So yeah. What else? I feel like there was a lot of pleasure-seeking behavior. And I think that makes sense. And because of that, I felt like, I don't know why you're, dating women when you want to pleasure seek so much. Like, he ended up having, conversations with lots of DMs with women, and they were inappropriate, and it was just, he's like, well, it's socially fun, and I'm like, but we're trying to build a life and have a family, and that doesn't really fit there, and he has some things going for him. Like, he's still married. He was married in prison years ago and still married. And I was like, well, you really, really spent a lot of effort going on this Dominican Republic trip with some other guys, getting your passport and everything together, which you didn't have, but you still got this divorce pending, so priorities. But I mean, hey, what can you expect from someone who hasn't been in society all these years, right? So these were things that I really didn't think about because it's like you can't really think about these things until they come up, like you don't expect. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there are lots of men that come out of prison that are different. Maybe they were in for a shorter period of time, or they went in at a different time in their life, or even they were in a relationship from the time they were in prison on the way out. Last but not least, it was hard that he wanted to help so many inmates or people that had just gotten out. That may sound bad, and it's not supposed to, because we should all support each other for sure. But there's only so much time in the day, right? We can't support everyone, especially when we're trying to have businesses and babies and run lives and spend time and everything like that. Oh, and let me add that he works in the prison 3 days a week. So 3 days a week he's in the prison anyway. And then the days that he's out, he's taking calls from prisoners, he's talking to prisoners, he's welcoming them home, he's going to parties with them, he's going to events, all that stuff. And I'm not knocking it whatsoever. It's just, it happened all the time. And, it's kind of like, well, this is a big part of your life, and this has been a big part of your life for a long time. And it's kind of, I feel like I couldn't fit in. And that's his choice, because he would have to fit me in the best way he could. And I'm not saying he didn't, because we saw each other pretty often, but that was a very important thing to him. And sometimes it was kind of like, these are grown men, and I get that they need help and support and comfort and all sorts of different things. But at the end of the day, we kind of have this family thing, trying to pop off, and there's these grown men all the time that need your help or talking to you. And I get that as a part of his job as well, and just a part of his life. But when he's at my house on the phone, like every day on the phone, come in on the phone, be on the phone multiple times during the time he was here, that was a little rough. That got a little rough for me. So for me, I feel like, since I haven't really had anxiety lately, I feel like the last few years of life, the anxiety that I've received have been from men, because I want to get married and I want to have a family and I want all that in my life. And it's really hard to date especially in Los Angeles, get to know someone, you know, and it's just kind of like, for this situation to come into my life where it's kind of like, it's very hard to see eye to eye, you know. I want to be taken care of and just loved and supported, and I want to feel safe and stable, and I want someone who's excited about life and excited about planning life and excited about doing this thing with me. I've always looked for a man, well, not always, but for the last, say, like 10 years, wanted a man that wanted to be an entrepreneur with me. Like, I want to be an entrepreneur. I want him to want to be an entrepreneur, but I think it would be so great to do that together. You know, we can spend time together and you keep things in the family, you support each other. I love the thought of that. And that's when we met. That is why we were drawn to each other, is because we both felt that way. But the differences have just caused so much strife for us that it's hard, you know? It's hard for me to give him what he wants in the almost 100% comfort department. And I think it's hard for him to really understand what a woman wants because he doesn't really have an experience with them. And, you know, we are all the things. We are complicated. We are confusing. We are emotional. We are hormonal. I mean, I've been pregnant basically almost our whole relationship. So for me, I'm like, you know, I'm pregnant. I need your support. Like, my hormones are surging through my body. I feel crazy. And, you know, he's like, well, you're giving me all this conflict. Well, I'm kind of also giving you a baby. So it's been rough, to say the least, for sure. But it's been an experience, and I've learned a lot. Hopefully he's learned a lot. I think that we will end up, whatever it is, we'll end up being friends, cordial, in a good situation, getting along with each other. I don't have any issues with him whatsoever. I don't have any hard feelings. I don't think he's a bad person. I think one day he'll make someone a super great partner. I just don't think that time is now. He's only 34, so he has a little more time to waste than I do. You know, and that works. But, you know, I just wanted to talk about this because as there's lots of women these days, especially educated women, who spend a lot of time in school and who are now in their late 30s and 40s that aren't in relationships or not married or don't have kids and do still strive to have these things in life. And, you know, I just want to say, like, I came into this relationship after being single for over a year. Like, oh my gosh, like, this man has so much of what I want. I mean, except his background. But that is what it is, and I accepted it for what it was. But I really didn't pay attention to the fact that I should have probably spent more time getting to know him. I mean, I didn't expect to get pregnant. I mean, we talked about it, but to get pregnant at this time in life is not the easiest thing to do. I didn't even know if that was possible for me. I was open to having another child, and I wanted to do it before I could no longer do it. So I'm definitely not upset or regret that decision. I'm very happy to be welcoming a little girl into this world. Her name is going to be Zuri. She's going to be amazing and all that jazz. You know, but since I am on limited amounts of time to find my person, I will definitely have more questions for the next person that I date later on in life. Because we really have to have an understanding of each other. So yeah, so for any women who are in their 40s and dating anyone, you know, good luck. No, there's lots of people who end up in relationships or get married, and I see it all the time. And one kind of good thing about this time of life is people that were married before, are kind of divorcing and coming back into the scene, and they're coming back with a lot more experience than they had before. Like, some people call it baggage, but please get, a lot of women in their 40s have kids. A lot of men in their 40s have kids. But we can understand each other because we're there together. So it may be baggage, but experience, there's nothing that can take that away. Nothing in this world. So, if you're in your 40s and you date a younger man, because I know a lot of women are these days, have real conversations with him about what he's looking for, since he does have a lot more time to just play the field and, mess around or whatever. My name is Dr. Chandra Smallwood. Reach out to me if you would like. I hope to hear from you. I will add my Instagram, my schedule link at the bottom for anyone who wants to have a consultation or get together. I'm an anxiety coach as well as a pharmacist. This is just like a vlog situation about things I go through in life and how it has affected my anxiety or gives me anxiety, so I can relate to other women.